Thinking about self-publishing and don't know where to start? Join the Spa Girls each week for 30 minutes of honest advice, tips and resources. I'm Trudy J and I am here with Cheryl Phipps.
Hi there.
Shah Barrett.
Hi.
Wendy is not with us today, unfortunately, but instead we have the delightful Annika Martin. Yay!
Yay! Welcome to the spa.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's awesome to be here. In one of your squares.
Just like
the game show, isn't it?
Yeah.
Brady
We're the Brady Bunch. I'm super excited. I'm a total fan of Annika's writing. I love all her books. So, you know, I'm going to attempt to pull it back in a little bit during the show, but just so you know, I'll read your bio out quickly and then we'll just get right into it and ask you all these questions. And we're talking about rom-coms because you have some amazing rom-coms out there in the world. And I would love to know how you do everything to do with them. So this is just stolen from Amazon. I hope it's all correct. I didn't check earlier.
What do I?
Annika Martin is a New York Times best-selling author who loves reading and writing fun, sexy books, taking pictures of her cats, rocking out, saving animals, taking long baths, and consuming boatloads of chocolate suckers. She can be found hanging out in Minneapolis coffee shops with her awesome writer husband and tending her very wild, bee-friendly garden. And she's also a Rita Award-winning author writing under the name Carolyn Crane, which is another world as well. So that's awesome. Yay.
Yay.
Well, I guess that was true up until last year, and I'm not hanging out in coffee shops now.
No.
Hopefully one day
Soon.
Yeah.
Soon. Yeah.
So can we talk about a little bit about how you got into writing and where you came in and how you got into self-publishing to start with? Can you give us your background?
Sure. Well, I'm one of those people that's always been a writer, and I wrote, poems, and I wrote little funny essays as a child and all this sort of thing. And then I was always really into, as a child, into genre fiction and, like fantasy stuff. And, and then I don't know. And then I kind of around college, I got very serious and I was into real literary fiction. So I started in literary fiction actually. And that was all I was reading. And then and then somebody gave me Outlander. Mind blown.
Yeah.
What is this?
Yes.
And so then I was like, this is all I want to read now. And then it was all I wanted to write, and so I kind of, that's where I went. And so I started in urban fantasy as Carolyn Crane. And so I was published in 2010 with this trilogy that was sort of, very whatever, magical and everything. And then I branched out into romantic suspense, though, to get to self-publishing. So I was traditionally published by Random House with a trilogy for the first and second book. And then they didn't sell really well. And they dropped my third book. And it was 2010, 2011. And I was just heartbroken. Like, my life is over. And and I had also was a cliffhanger, and the third one, all these people couldn't read the letter. And so, but finally some really small publisher picked it up, Sam Hain, a year and a half later. Everybody, it was literally the worst cliffhanger. And so then after that, I just started dabbling in self-publishing. And then I went on to write some romantic suspense. And then, and it was just fun because that was what I was reading, and I like spies, and I love James Bond, harkening back to childhood when I was crazy about James Bond and Nancy Drew. And then, I don't know. Oh, and then I was, I wanted to just sort of experiment and have fun and be wild and crazy. And I can get really perfectionistic with my writing, really perfectionistic. So then I was like, I'm going to have a secret pen name where I'm going to just write the wildest and weirdest stuff I can think of. And thus was born Annika Martin, writing The Kinky Bank Robbers. So then that was my kind of fun play, be free sort of thing. And I'm a total plotter, but that was the only book ever that I just pantsed. It was this weird springtime thing in Minneapolis, and then but then I was having more fun as Annika. So then I was like, I'm gonna write more Kinky Bank Robbers. And then I was like, I'm gonna write something funny, or I'm gonna write something dark. I know that you have people on this show who are like, you should pick a genre. And you really should, but that's not what I did. Every genre. Now I'm writing rom-com though. So, and I really have always liked to write sort of humorous stuff. my husband's also a writer, and early in our marriage, we put out this like humorous essay magazine. I don't know. And I like writing cartoons too.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
anyway, that's how I
that's-
got here. And now I'm just concentrating on being Annika.
Okay,
That
awesome.
is a cool story.
Yeah.
It is. I love
It
it.
was long,
No.
rambling,
No.
a wrong and
Not at
winding
all.
road.
That's life.
Yeah. So let's talk about the rom-coms. They're the most recent. Are they the ones that you're working on now? Are they you kind of where you're?
Yes.
where
So,
is it?
yeah, it feels like home to me to write rom-coms. I like reading them. I like writing them. And so, yeah, so that is what I focus on now. Though sometimes I take a break. Like if I'm feeling like, I do like to take a break and write something sort of
Yeah.
angsty, just to kind of as a palate cleanser sometimes, but I always kind of want to go back to writing the rom-coms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there is a very big difference to some of the stuff like the dark romance stuff, for example, the books that you wrote with Sky Warren versus
Yeah.
the light-hearted rom-coms. It's a very
They're very different, but it's like I like the diversity of it, because sometimes you're kind of exercising out sort of your this dark drama. It feels good to kind of, it's sort of like music. Sometimes you want something light and fun, and sometimes you want like something with a lot of heavy bass and just
yeah.
So,
No, that's awesome. I love that.
yeah.
Okay, but
Yeah.
today,
It's really,
oh, sorry.
oh, excuse me.
I was going to say we're
What?
going to focus on the rom-coms. We're going to
Yes, but we're going to talk about that. That is what I'm doing now. So
yes, that is what we're doing
and
now.
I love it. Yeah.
So with the rom-com, like how do you define it? Like what is a rom-com to you? Like what are we talking about?
Yeah, that is a really good question, because it's a very popular genre now. So it kind of, the definition's been really stretched, and I'm fine with that, because rom-com and romance itself is such a big tent. And so, I've seen people calling, just sort of somewhat witty contemporary, rom-com. And it is a kind of rom-com. There's so many different kinds, just like there's so many different kinds of mysteries or whatever. But like, if you're going to say what's a rom-com, I kind of like, I know it when I see it, right? I think like, obviously it needs to be funny in some way. Sometimes it's a funny overall setup. Like, sometimes it's physically funny. Sometimes it's more funny on the level of lines. Sometimes, I think different writers come to rom-com in different ways. So like, how would I define it?
Maybe your definition for your books, how when you're coming to it, what do you look for?
Well, I'll just tell you how I think about it, I guess, because I think defining it, I just think it's like a funny romance, really. Like that's all I think, really, if it boils down to a funny romance.
Yeah.
So like the things I think about though are like when I'm approaching a rom-com, I'm always, personally, I like to think about one kind of what I think of as a marquee funny scene. Like I'm always looking for, and sometimes I even start with that, even if it gets wiped out in the book. Sometimes I have like an idea for a big ha-ha scene. And I feel like if I'm writing a romantic comedy and I don't have that scene, I get a little nervous. Like right now, actually, I had an idea for a scene. I'm working on this book right now called Just Not That Into Billionaires. Yeah. And I had this idea like, oh, I'm going to do this scene. It'll be really funny. And she'll have this dress on and it'll be like wacky. And now that I'm deep into the romance, I'm like, this character won't do this. This wouldn't make sense. It's not working. So I'm like, where's my marquee funny scene? But it's like, sometimes you just have to trust it. Like sometimes I'm a kind of a miner, like a miner for gold. Like sometimes you just have to trust that if you keep mining and mining, the scene will come too, like the funny scene, the conceit. Sometimes, in a lot of ways, I think of a romantic comedy as a quest of identity or a discovery, almost like a detective novel. Like in a lot of I came from romantic suspense and urban fantasy, and those are detective-y, and in a way romantic comedy isn't that far off. Like you're like for instance I'm just gonna like use my books for examples. Like in Most Eligible Billionaire, the hero thinks that the heroine is a scam artist, and the heroine thinks the hero is the world's biggest jerk. And so neither thing is true, but so like they're thrown together in this sort of boardroom drama stuff. And it's sort of kind of uncovering each other's identity, like almost like a statue, you know, where you're like peeling away the rock or chipping it away and you're finding like what's really underneath. Or like Wake Up Call Girl, she's, you know, she's like his employee, but she's secretly his wake up call girl. And he's like desperately looking for the wake up call girl, like trying to find who is this woman, sort of like Cinderella, you know, it's basically Cinderella. Yeah. Well, Cinderella is like a detective story too, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, so, or like if you look at Sleepless in Seattle or While You Were Sleeping, you know, there's so like
the quest is there, isn't it? Yeah.
Right. It's or what's the one with the phone call? You've Got Mail. So like, I think in a lot of contemporary romances, it's not as much a detective story. It's more like an intimacy story. So anyway, I don't know. These are things I think about.
It's quite interesting to me that because you've said that you're a plotter, and then you said you're mining for the story or the different aspects of it. So how do those two marry up? I find it really interesting because I'm kind of like a hybrid plotter and pantser. So is that something that you call yourself too? Or is it? Would definitely. Like I want to be a plotter. I like to have structure. I feel comfortable, but then once I get inside that structure, sometimes I kind of tear it down. I'm like, oh no, this is right. I'm going to do it differently. So sometimes I think it's like I like to build an outline, but sometimes you have to just get in there and use the force too. And so that's awesome. Nice.
So it's hard. It's really hard. I mean, writing is really a hard business. You know, it's so much is trust and faith and just go. You just like I had a day today where it was a really hard day of writing, and you just have to go. I'm just going to keep going forward, and I know I'll find the way because I've done it before, and I know I can do it again, even when it seems like this book's not working, this plot's not working. But you know. You just like we've read enough books that we've internalized the structure, and maybe that's not a helpful hint, but you just have to keep going forward.
I think trust in the process is a really good message.
Your process,
right, and not looking at other people. You know, like I have this myth out there of like all these other writers have it so easy, like they just kind of go and they've got there, you know, but that's not really true. And then I'll be like, I'll go to my friends, tell me that that's not true. Tell me your book falls apart at 40K too. And they'll be like, my book falls apart at 40K. It's fine. You know, everybody's book falls apart somewhere. So, I mean, but except for the mythical person I have in my head. But that's just in her. So anyway, but anyway, but that's not so much about rom-com as just writing in general. But I think also with being funny in novels, I'm just gonna like talk about things, ways that I try to approach being funny is, well, I keep a file. Like anytime I see something funny or someone tells me a funny anecdote, like I actually feel like everybody can be funny. I feel like everybody can add more humor to their books if they want to. It's sort of like when you're single, you know, when you're upset about being single and you see everyone's a couple, like you're just attuned to that. And suddenly your eyes are just going there. Oh, everyone's in love except me, you know, because like I've been there. And so it's sort of like what you're training yourself to kind of look at. And so like, I'm always thinking like, what's funny? Why is this funny? Why is this thing on TV funny? Why, you know, why is this anecdote that's my friend is telling me so funny? And so I'll write these things down because I won't know how I'll use them, but I'll be like this, I just kind of keep a big file or I'll just think of something or I'll read something in some weird place, like the newspaper or whatever, you know, things come to you over the internet. And so you start like looking at things and knowing that. And so then you have like a file of stuff to kind of use. And also sometimes when I read other books that I think are funny, I'll actually like just kind of copy down and look at the jokes and I'll go, why is this funny? You know, like, and because there are structures to jokes, like there's analogies, there's a funny analogy, there's like a wild image. There's it's not like you can be that scientific about it, but once you kind of start to recognize these things, then you see them more. And then I feel like it's a muscle that you can develop. And then when you look at your own writing, like sometimes I'll look at something and I'll look at a paragraph or something and I'll be like, oh, he was like, moving as fast as, and then I'll know it's like, there's something there. Like he's moving as fast as a something with a something. I'll know that it's there. So I'll just mark it, because I know I've learned to kind of recognize just on the sentence level. I mean, I'm always building this. I mean, hopefully I'm getting better and better at it. Like this is like a muscle that I'm trying to work all the time is at a sentence level, where can I recognize holes from just being a student of comedy? So it's not just like laugh at stuff, but really think about, why is this funny? Why is this so surprising? Like, how does this make there's things that like make your brain kind of go in a pattern and then they'll upset the pattern. Like that's a way of being funny. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm always kind of on the lookout and thinking about it a little bit. I'm a student of it.
That's really interesting to me, because it's almost like these layers of it. Like you were talking before about the book, and I forget the names of them, but it's Henry and I can't remember her name, but she has dog Smuckers.
Vicky Vonda. Yeah,
Vicky, that's right. And so that's the first book in the Billionaires series. And you were sort of, it's a boardroom guy and he's a jerk, and he thinks she's a con woman, but it's literally more than that. It's like there's actually this whole setup around. She's got the dog and the dog company, and he thinks that she's conned her, like it's all of that. And then that's a funny situation. But then you're also getting down like right into the, the gritty detail of like the sentence structure and being funny at that level too. So it's almost like it's not just about that, you've got to think about it at every layer. Like, is something you do consciously or?
Yes, I do. Like usually like the sentence layer comes a little later. Like I'm thinking about the overall setup too. Yeah, that book started where I actually just thought it would be funny. It was originally about a cat. I thought it would be funny if someone left. Well, and actually a hotelier, a really rich woman who was hated in New York City, did leave millions of dollars to her dog one time. And everybody was really angry about it. And I thought, well, that would be funny, but I thought it would be funnier. I have cats. I thought it'd be funnier if it was like left to a cat. And so then I was like, I have to write about that someday. Then it ended up being back to a dog. But yeah, so I just thought it would be fun. I just imagined like, and then I sort of built it up from around there. So that was, there's always like a seed. I don't know. I think that wasn't your question actually, but yeah, I'm always thinking about, because there's a macro level and a micro level of being funny in a way. Like I have a friend, LB Gregg, she writes these really funny MM romances. And she always wants to start with if she doesn't have a giant crazy slapstick scene right in the beginning of the book, she can't start. Like I think everybody, and Kristen Higgins, I think is like this too. She'll have some really funny scene, like their underwear is caught and they're climbing out a bathroom window, or something funny like that. So there's all these different kinds of being funny, and I think it's good to have a lot of them sprinkled in.
So it's not just the little things, it's not just the big. Because when I was thinking of rom-com, I think, you have to have the setup, you have to have the funny situation. And I feel like all of your books do have that, but it's interesting that you didn't sort of, that wasn't your first definition of it. It was more just, it has to be funny with romance. Like that's fascinating to me.
Well, I'd like them all to have a funny setup, but sometimes the funny setup doesn't really, well, even Fake Fiance is just a funny setup in a lot of ways. Like it can be,
like
but go ahead.
No, I'm just like, if you go through the books, that's like she's a postal worker who poses as his, I can't even remember,
emotional therapy coach, like this really shy, quiet postal worker is his big scary billionaire's emotional therapy coach. Situations like that, and I'm like, how do you that's just crazy, but they're all there. So anyway, that's
just talking on the being a student of humor. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It was a documentary movie, and it followed Joan Rivers, I think, for a year, and she did exactly that. She has had, and then she would write down snippets or jokes or just funny thoughts or things that she observed, and she had this entire it was like on index cards, and it was like a library, like this
Wow.
giant, I don't know, not filer decks, but like, filing system for it. And she would pull it out, and there was just thousands of these index cards. If you can see it, it's something to do, I can't think offhand.
I
but
want to
it's like
see that.
A year. It was kind of a year in Joan Rivers' life, and I mean, I
I'm
love
going to
Joan
look
Rivers.
for that.
Yeah, and it resonated with soon with what you were saying. That was exactly what she was, a student of it.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, you're a psychologist, really.
Do you have a psychology degree at all? Is this where it's coming from?
No, English lit.
So let's get back to rom-com. So when you're like, because I love your characters, and I think that you do characters really well. So can you talk about how do they come first? Do they come, how do you get into the characters' heads?
Yeah. So like the cool thing would be to say that they come first, but for me, they don't. They like, I'm almost like trying to find my characters as because I'll think of like, oh, this will be funny, like a funny setup, like you said, like the dog inherited all the money or whatever. And like, I think there's two. Well, I think, and you've covered this a lot on your podcast, is like, you need a lot of conflict. There's a couple types of conflict. And so a lot of times I'll kind of move from the plot, and I'll also move from the conflict a little bit. Like obviously, in Wake Up Call Girl, let's say, for instance, she wants to stay hidden and he wants to bust her, so like, it's like this sort of thing. That's a big conflict, is, or in the Return Billionaire to Sender, that's the postal worker. Like he wants to tear down the building she's living in, and she wants to save it by showing him these videos of how important the people are, and these tender videos, which she like masquerades as his emotional therapy coach. Like, I know this, like, probably to someone who hasn't read it, I'm really bad at explaining my own novels, but anyway, the conflict is they want obviously different things. I think that's with all romance novels. You want some external conflict where they want different things. And then also, okay, there's two things I want to talk about. I'm just writing this down so I don't forget, but also, like, one of the tricks that I use for internal conflict, like at any point in the novel, I need to be able to ask myself, why can't they be together right now? And I didn't come up with that. I think that's things people talk about. Someone's probably said that. So, but you have, because you can't say, well, they could be together right now, right? You have to have something splitting them apart. And this isn't really going to character, but that goes to internal conflict in a lot of ways. And one of the things that I'll do with my characters is I'll give them each a motto, and like a wrong motto. And this is a little bit of my twist on Michael Haig, which I know that you guys have mentioned on the podcast, and I love, I'm sort of a nerd about Michael Haig. He kind of riffs off of the hero's journey a little bit. And what he does is he has the characters moving from their identity, which is their like a wrong story about themselves, into their essence, which is a right story about themselves. And sort of it's both characters need to be kind of growing to deserve the love of the other, or to win it. And then, during the dark moment, they retreat back into their like false selves that like, everybody leaves me, I'm gonna like, shut the doors on you now. But then they're like, no, I'm gonna open them and be brave, and that's kind of like, in a nutshell, a romance journey. But like, but a lot of times I will give the characters like a false motto about themselves. I find that helps me, and then they repeat it a lot. So like, for instance, in Return Billionaire to Sender, the heroine is like, I'm not enough. That's kind of her story. She repeats, I'm not good enough, and I don't do enough, and I'll never be enough. Like, I'm always, she has like wounds that sort of feed into that. Like, and then the hero is like, I'm a bad guy. And so he's just like, that's how he goes through life. And that's why, in a way, that's why they can't be together in their minds. And so it's really hard to get that motto for me. Like, I can't sometimes I'll be like, on this book, I'm going to start out knowing the motto, but it never works like that. Like, I'm always like, no, this isn't right. And I throw away a bunch of mottos. And finally I kind of find the motto. And then make them really say it a lot. I don't know why, but it just works for me to do this motto thing. So also like a lot of one of my favorite, in terms of heroine characters, one of my favorite authors is Kresley Cole. You guys familiar with her work in her Immortal series, where the women, what the heck are they called? The Valkyries. They're all like, I mean, I love them. They're all like, they love shiny things. They're very witty. They're like, her heroes are always very serious, and I'm a big vampire guy and so serious. And then her Valkyries, the heroines usually take the air out of them a little bit, right? And I was such a big fan of Kresley Cole. I know I never talk about this, but like, I feel like in a way, I hopefully internalized some of that goodness, because in a way, that's a way I think a little bit about my billionaires and my heroines, is that the billionaires are really puffed up like balloons, and the heroines are fun and witty, and they're being themselves, and they're just going about their lives, and they're trying to do their things, and they're like there with a pin popping that balloon. And it's funny because, okay, so like part of my problem today, where I was like writing like this book, right, and I'm like, something wasn't working, and I'm like, the hero isn't, maybe I'm not pushing him enough to be jerky enough, because it's in a way like humor needs a straight guy in a way. Like if you've got like, oh, he's a really nice guy, he's a beta hero, like it's not that fun then to take the air out of him. Or the English would say take the piss out of him, I guess. You know. And I don't know, I'm rambling, but that's kind of what I'm that's kind of what's on my mind a little bit, and it's on my mind today. I'm like, why isn't this being funny? Like, so if the heroine's doing something that's going to annoy the hero, it's not that funny if the hero's just like this really nice guy. It's a lot funnier if the hero's like the biggest jerk in the world who's like really self-important. So,
and also you don't want to make the heroine mean, do you? Because you don't want to be her to be a bitch or mean either. So it's kind of a balance. It must be a hard balance.
It's a very hard. Like I really feel like I'm a watchmaker. Like once I get my plot down, I'm like, tighten this, loosen this. It's all about just getting balance. Like I'm a incredible rewriter. Like I rewrite. Oh, I love rewriting too. Luckily, so I like rewrite so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
To do that.
That's reassuring, because I'm thinking of all these things that you're talking about, and I'm thinking, holy cow, if I had to have all that in my head, I wouldn't write more than 10 words in a row without stopping and just so that's
oh my God. Yes. And it's really hard. And sometimes I tell myself, I'm like, you don't have to have it all on the first draft, just get it down. Like Nora Roberts says, just get down that junky first draft. You know, but then you want it to not be junky.
Damn it. So what is your process? So do you get out that first draft, or are you very like you're rewriting as you're writing the first draft? Like what do you do?
Kind of a little bit of a mix. Like I'll generally outline, because I like to know where I'm going, even if I throw it away eventually. And then I'll write a bunch of it. And I will rewrite it. Like I'll sort of back up to look at what I did the day before. I've been experimenting with narration. Dictation. I'm not really sure. I don't feel like my mind is right there yet, but I want to be able to do it because I feel like it would speed me up. Because I'm a really slow writer. Like I can get out 1 or 2 books a year. But so anyway, I'll outline, and then usually the book will fall apart at some point midway through. I'll be like, this is all wrong. Everything's wrong. And sometimes I'll like kind of trash a lot of it, or sometimes I'll just change a lot of it. And then I'll like come back, and then I'll get it up to about 70%. And then I'll have another sort of crisis. That's where I am right now. And then I'll be like, oh, this is wrong. We have to, and then I'll be like, I really want to get to the end so I can kind of do the fun part of rewriting and making everything right. But I can't get to the end without going back and like reviewing all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So that's my process is like a lot of emotional angst.
Yeah.
But that's not really, but is that helpful to people? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it is. I think it's good to know that it's a messy process, shall we
It's-
say? But I
Yeah.
mean that respectfully. But it's, I
Yeah.
think, particularly the fact that you're saying that you're a slower writer too. That's also
Mm.
a very welcome thing to hear too for a lot of us.
I think so. When we're hearing about so many people doing so much a year, it's nice to hear the other side of it, and that you can still be successful at that rate. So
Well,
yeah.
Thank you. Yes. I mean, and I would change it if I could, but it's working for me, and I
Yeah.
feel like
Mm.
Yeah.
these books that we're writing are going to be around for a long time, so we might as well. I mean, people can crank out 6 books a year, and the books
Yeah.
can be brilliant too. I'm not saying like you
Mm.
have to go slow, but I'm not going to be upset that I'm just taking a long time to do these books, I guess, and that is just where I am stuck anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just feel like you just need a lot of faith in your own process and not looking at the other writers who are maybe going faster than you.
Mm.
Yeah.
I agree.
So in terms of the characters, so when you create the setup, and so I'm obsessed by your
Mhm.
characters. I can't help myself. So you
Oh no, yeah.
your setup's there, you've got them, and then they come into the story. Because to me, as a reader, when I'm reading your stories, they seem really well formed, and it all kind of clicks really well into place. Is that just because you've rewritten them so many times, or is that something that it's how do you stop and plot the characters themselves, or does it come out in the writing? Or
I think that's a really good question, and I feel like it's just in a way a journey of discovery. Like I'm sometimes after I toil a lot, I'll happen on something and I'll be like, people will think that this is really brilliant, but it's come out of luck and toil, and so
Yeah.
I don't know. So I feel like you just have to have but in a way you have to be in the right place at the right time in your manuscript. Like you have to, I think there's some value to coming at it in all just different angles with everything you have. So like I'll be outlining, I'll think of it at night before I go to bed. Sometimes I won't know why something's working, and I'll tell myself the story, or I'll tell my husband the story. I'll be like, can I just tell you the story? Because I feel like there's a lot to, like, we're all just natural storytellers. So how would you just tell the story verbally to someone? Where are the places that you feel like it lights up, or it lights up somebody else? Where do their faces light up? And then that can give you clues. Sometimes I'll just, I'll think about it running, or sometimes it's just that I actually I'll go, if I'm losing faith, I'll go, what is funny in this story? What am I looking forward to in this story? I think it's really important to let readers have things to anticipate and look forward to, instead of dread. I think getting back to the characters, I think it's a really fun thing to do, to have the characters have really specific quirks, like they hate a certain thing. So I think it's important to think about reader pleasure, so that if a character hates a certain thing, the reader gets a great amount of pleasure seeing, if a reader if a hero hates clowns, it's very pleasurable for the reader for you to have clowns appear in the manuscript, and it's funny for them. So I'm always thinking, so I guess it's just I'm thinking, where's the reader pleasure? Where's my pleasure? Where's the pleasure in me narrating it to myself? How do I tell the story to myself now? And I will mini plot or micro plot. Sometimes I will write stuff sometimes I think you have to write stuff so wrong to get it right, because you're like, this is the wrong, I've gone down this wrong road for 10,000 words. Well, now I know, let me go back and back up, and now I know the wrong road to go on, so let me go down a different road, and maybe I'll find some treasure here. So I feel like if you keep just going and sort of being sort of calm and having sort of faith in yourself, you can just go, I will find it. You just have to keep going.
Love that idea about reader pleasure. I haven't
Yeah.
heard that term before, and all the people we've talked to, so that's wonderful. But also, like your for the example, because I hate clowns too, and I totally empathize with the character, but that anticipation, if you kind of flag that he hates clowns as a reader, you're kind of going to be waiting for the clown scene further down the book, so you don't necessarily want to give it to them in the first quarter of the book. You want that anticipation to build even. I like that.
Yeah, and reader pleasure isn't my own thing, but yeah, like and like looking at where when you're reading a book, where are you finding pleasure? Like really thinking about moments like that. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, I love that too. I think it's awesome.
I think also talking about a part of the book that's not going right lead you to another path as well, because if you keep writing like you say in that same vein, it's kind of a waste of time, isn't it? If you already know it's wrong because it's not right.
And sometimes what we do as authors is keep going because we think, oh, we've already written 10,000, I've already gone down this path, instead of stopping and kind of going, no, let's stop and start, like what do they call it, like the sunk cost fallacy? Is it
right.
Yeah.
Like you kind of feel like you have to keep going because you've started down this track, but actually it's nice to know that it's okay.
That's a great analogy. Yes, because I think wrong ways can show you things too, as well as right ways, sometimes it's weird. Like sometimes I feel like I'm writing this really complex thing, and then at the end of the novel, I'll be like, it's so simple now. But you have to go through all this complexity to get to this simplicity. It's so weird. Cause like when I look at these novels that I've written, on this side, they look pretty simple. So in a way, it's just like fumbling through to find it, and then you find it, and then you know it. Oh, I don't know if this is even helpful.
No, it makes a lot of sense.
There's a great deal of relief, I think, in hearing people's struggles. That's kind of cruel, isn't it? But actually seeing people's struggles makes yours more palatable.
Right. And it's just, it is a way of finding the story. I feel like the story writing is a journey of discovery. It's not like telling the story, it's finding the story more than telling the story for me.
Yeah.
I love that.
So how much do you have plotted before? If you're still finding the story as you write and things, do you go through and use, say, for example, Michael Haig's, whatever his 6-stage plot, or you don't even do that much?
Well, lately I've been really moving from the dark moment, because I've had too many times where I have a dark moment and then it's not working out. And so like Michael Haig has that, it's that all is lost moment for him 75%. So like for the listeners, does everyone know what the dark moment is? But it's where it's the all is lost moment. And so in a way, I guess what is your question again? Sometimes I'll think about the dark moment first. For some reason that has been working for me.
Okay.
That kind of makes sense though. If you're gonna abandon them on the top of a mountain, then you can go back and retrace, like figure out how they got to that point, kind of thing. But that they've got to end up on two opposite, mountaintops, kind of thing.
Right. Totally. Exactly. And another thing that I've been doing that, and this is not original to me, but is writing the Facebook ad first.
Oh, cool.
Like, because like it gets you to kind of hone right down to that hook, and so some people write the back blurb copy first, and so I've sort of started to do that because kind of like it's important. Well, it's important. Who was that famous movie producer is like, I can sell any movie if it's got a good hook. And
I know the quote, but I can't think who said it.
Mel Brooks, I think.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. But anyway, someone said it. And it's just, so I think it's really important because you want to be, as a writer, you want to be thinking about hooking the readers. If you have a really beautiful novel, but it's got a crap hook, people are not going to read it. You know, you have to get them to, but also the hook, the Facebook ad or the back cover copy will guide you in where the reader pleasure is in a way too. So
and it guides you as the author too. Like if you know what the hook is, it keeps you on track. You don't sort of go off on random tangents that have nothing to do with the main plot. That's awesome. I mean, you have several things like that. Then you've got like the character motto, and then you know the hook. Like these are all things that kind of like keep you on the straight and narrow and keep you consistent, I guess. Do you feel like?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do shift them, like I say, throughout. You know, I saw at RWA one time a talk by Susan Elizabeth Phillips, and she told me, or she didn't tell me, she told the audience, me personally.
my best friend Susan.
She was like, what she does is, it's almost like when she starts out, it's cardboard cutouts that she's moving around on a board. And
interesting.
It takes forever for them to become fleshed out. She's just stupidly moving them around on a board until it kind of she's made something out of it. And in a lot of ways, I feel like that's what I'm doing. And it really helped me to hear that, because like all these other people, it felt like, you know, I know the character, I have this whole like a long thing about them. Sometimes when I get into trouble, I like to journal from the point of view of one of the characters. That has been a really good, especially like the hero. The hero's voice is so hard to do sometimes, because like in any book, I look at it as a model of one character is known. That's the heroine in my rom-coms. And one character is the revealed character. That is the hero. Like the hero is usually more of a mystery, especially in terms of his emotions. And, but I also write in dual point of view. So it's one of the smoke and mirrors tricks that I'm always working on is how to do the hero point of view, but he's a revealed character. So a lot of times my heroes are lying to themselves, or they're benighted about their own emotions. And so it's quite the juggling act. So my hero chapters are very difficult, and they're a lot of times all over the place while I'm drafting, until I'm kind of chipping them away. And a lot of times I'm pulling away information. I'm like, the hero doesn't know this about himself. Like I'll have it down on a first draft, but then I'll be like, or the hero needs to be lying to himself even more, you know? And
that goes back to your motto, doesn't it, for the character, where you start with the motto or the false belief. That would be speaking to that, wouldn't it? You know, he's kind of
I'm the bad guy,
narrating through that false point of view kind of thing.
Yes. And sometimes I don't have the motto right, and I have to adjust that. I mean, I'm adjusting everything. And I think like it's important. I think like a writer can get really hung up on almost like a rock in the middle of a stream. And you're like, well, I have to have this scene where he does this. But sometimes you just have to take that rock away at some point, and you're like, oh my God, now the river is flowing. And so everything needs to be, everything needs to be on the table, and everything needs to be, you can take it off the table. And so, so like, even I have a pretty like advanced draft, and I'm just now getting down the mottos right.
Wow.
Okay. The mottos wrong before. What are my mottos now?
But it didn't stop you writing it, though. I think that's the important thing. You keep going, and then that revelation kind of happened through the work, not by you sitting there navel gazing for 5 months kind of thing on the right model.
That's definitely my process. Yes. Yeah. So it's like, in a way, it's like you get a little more clarity on the motto, you get a little more clarity on the plot, you're getting a little more clarity on the characters, you're getting, just like all the clarity, things just get more clarity and more simple.
Do you have a visual of what they look like in your head as well? Are you a visual?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you know when it's time to finish? Like I feel like if it was me, I'd want to keep playing and keep changing and keep sort of working on it forever. And do you kind of tell yourself, no, this is it? Like, or is it really obvious to you that it's done?
it's pretty obvious when it's done. And a lot of times it's just that I have a pre-order set too. And, but actually Breaking the Billionaire's Rules, I had a pre-order for that, and I wrote it, and I was like happy with it, but not really. I was like, this book could have been so much more, but I didn't want to blow my pre-order. So I wanted it to be more, and I fully and completely rewrote it 6 months later.
Oh, wow. So, that's the one where
it's like a different book.
Is that the one she's in the cat suit? Is that the one?
Like someone recently wrote to me like, the audio is so much different than this book that I read. But it is.
I just read that like about 3 or 4 weeks or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, and it was great. Loved the changes. I don't know what they were, but it was a great book.
Usually I don't do that though, but yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. That was so. What? Oh, okay. I'd love to know what the changes you were, but I'm not going to ask right now. I'd be
happy to send you the early draft. It was, it was. I'll tell you what the changes were. I mean, not specifically, but the dark moment was in the first version, the dark moment, I felt like it was a cheating dark moment. The dark moment was, so like they make this dartboard thing where they're throwing darts at his face. I think the girls are all really mad at him because he wrote this book. The hero wrote this book about like how to pick up girls. And all
the guys have been using it to pick up these girls.
Yes, yes. And so they're all these tricks.
Dodgy way,
And they're like, I can't believe I fell for that. And, and so anyway, and the heroine knew him from arts high school. So they're all like really mad. And she has to deliver him, be his new delivery girl. And he's making her like, whatever, do this sort of demeaning thing for him. And they're really mad. So anyway, the original dark moment was that he comes and discovers, after he's fallen for her, discovers his face full of darts in her apartment, and is really upset, and then they break up. But like,
see, now that's interesting, because that was totally the dark moment I was expecting, and it didn't happen. Yes. I was like, oh, she's such a genius. She didn't do what they expected. Yeah.
It was, right. It was what I was thinking about. Like, it was the obvious dark moment, and I went for it, and then I was like, this dark moment does not come from like the hearts of these characters. It's more like, oops, it's like I left out this piece of this incriminating thing, and now you're mad at me. But it wasn't like coming from their insecurities, it wasn't coming from their false motto about themselves, it wasn't coming from anything. It was just more like, oh, that was a dick move to do that. Now I'm mad. And so it never sat right with me that I went for that dark moment. And then I was like writing more rom-coms, and I found myself going, oh, well, read number 1 and 2, but I wasn't like wanting to recommend number 3. And I was like, that's not right, because that book could have been better. So then I went back and I just completely changed that dark moment, and it's a completely different book. Like, but I'll never do that again, hopefully.
So just out of curiosity, what did the dark moment change to then? What was it? It was from the dartboard.
Okay, well, first of all, part of the dark moment was, maybe you can, like, Trudy, you might be able to tell me better, but like part of the dark moment was he never answered for his shitty book about, I hope I can say that.
Yeah.
About picking up women. So they had kind of a fight about that. Yeah. And then
he kind of didn't see what was wrong with it, did it? He was kind of like, oh, I don't get what the problem was.
Why is everyone mad?
It was about helping guys who were shy picking up women, and he didn't realize that it had been used in, is that what it was? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So he never had to answer to that for that. And then she never had to kind of go, she hated to, she's an actress, but she didn't want to seem to be, no, I can't remember, but it was a thing about, she didn't want to be given a leg up sort of falsely, like she wanted to make it on her own merits. And so there was sort of a misunderstanding where her insecurities about that were able to rise to the surface instead of just mortification that he saw the dartboard.
Yeah. So it was really that much more deeper mind, if you like.
Which is good. Like, when you think about it, it's actually about the internal issues that they had, which is the whole of it, rather than some external kind of, oh, this is where it started kind of thing. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's actually probably a really good tip, is actually, even though it's like a lot of rom-com stuff might seem like it's sort of silly surface stuff, there's actually, because it's romance, there's still those really deep, layers to them. Like there's the false motto that you've got to deal with and kind of work through. So
totally. And another plotting device that I use is Gwen Hayes' Romancing the Beat. I think that you've talked about that on the show. And so so that's also talks about like the internal dark moment being more about the fears than something external, like Rome,
So I noticed on your books, your titles, you've got kind of a subtitle with actually really clearly puts out what the tropes are. Is that something you've done like for yourself when you start writing it, or is it kind of something that you've added later on in terms of the process of, like you said, I guess it would maybe go to when you were writing the Facebook ad, I guess you're kind of identifying, thinking, okay, this is a fish out of water scene, or this is a fish out of water trope. How do you go about identifying the tropes?
Most of my tropes are kind of the same. They're like enemies to lovers, or grumpy, sunshiny. And I'll just know it, these are just my go-to tropes. And I do feel like I am writing the same things over and over again sometimes, but I guess it's what I like.
Yeah, that's it.
So
and I love those tropes too. You see, that's the thing. I think that's why I connect to your book so much, because I love that's what I would read all day long if I had the opportunity. Enemies to lovers, grumpy sunshine. So.
Oh, right. I know. Me too. I love that. Yeah. And I feel like if you made me put a gun to my head, I couldn't write Friends to Lovers book.
Oh, same. And Cheryl loves the Friends to Lovers. It's so funny.
So what you guys are liking is the Pride and Prejudice, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
It's the grumpy sunshine, enemies to lovers. Like it's a classic one. But the fact that you've actually got it out there, I think it finds people like Trudy that absolutely that's what they want. So
yes, it's helpful. It's just marketing, really. It's helpful to tell the reader what they're in for. I mean, I think like the more you let the reader know what it's going to be, and also you'll get better reviews. You're just attracting the right kind of person that's going to like it. I just put it all out there. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the marketing. Let's move on from the and so what do you do? One thing I'd like to talk about is your covers, because I did notice that they had a different cover. I saw it back on Twitter somewhere. And then the covers you've got now, and the covers you've got now seem very on point for rom-com. Is that just because fashion's changed, or is that did something happen with that?
That's a really good question. My first cover was actually, it was, I was doing man faces. Well, my first one was, the first title was, instead of Most Eligible Billionaire, it was Most Eligible Bastard. And and it didn't sell that well. And then someone was like, that swear word tweaks people in like the Bible Belt, and it tweaks people. It's just like, it's sort of like, and they don't like it. It's got negative energy to it. And then I was like, God, and so then I went for the billionaire thing, because that's like a thing that it's just sort of like a keyword in a way, I guess, to be perfectly honest. It's a keyword, and it's like a trope too. Billionaire is a trope. And it was just like, it's just like widening my net, and he was a billionaire. So, but then back to the covers. So there was I had men on the covers, man faces, and I do like the cartoon covers, and it was just a marketing choice. Like, I wanted to go with cartoon covers actually early on, but then I had the man face covers going, and so I was like, well, let me keep this consistent. But then meanwhile, like, everyone was getting cartoon covers, and I felt like maybe about 2 years ago, the cartoon covers were looking very New York publisher, and I felt like that kind of says quality, in a lot of ways to a lot of people. And I wanted my covers to say that. So I switched them, and
Did you see a difference? Was there a significant difference in terms of?
Yeah. I feel like, I mean, it's hard to say, because like I switched them but I also had put out 2 books that year. So like my sales have been rising on that series a lot. And I don't know, it's always hard to know what's due to what. Is it the covers or not? But I do feel like the covers are the right covers for that genre. Like I feel like also the covers are becoming more specific, like in the world of romance. Like people look at a cartoon cover now and they're like rom-com, but they look at a man-faced cover now and they don't think that, unless it maybe has really cartoony writing on it. But I think 2 years ago, that wasn't the case. So I feel like cover fashions are evolving. And so I'm just trying to kind of stay with that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So is there, what other kind of marketing do you do? Do you, so you obviously do Facebook ads, do you have a newsletter, things like that?
I have a newsletter that and I'm trying to do it twice a month, but I do it only once a month. But I do, I put a lot of time into my newsletter because it's one of my favorite ways to connect with readers. And so I always try to kind of, because when I love a writer, I want to hear about their normal life a little bit. So I'm always trying to kind of say normal life things and a little bit about books. And it's hard though as writers, like when I love a writer, I want to know how they write though. So I don't think readers want to know that. No. It's a hard thing to know how much to talk about writing with readers. But anyway, I do newsletter and I slave over it, and I do a lot of Facebook ads lately. I just do I was trying to do AMS ads, but I'm not good at that. And I think because maybe I'm a wide author, I think it's easier to do KU because there's like a less on AMS ads, the barrier to entry is a little low for the clicks, I think. But I want to make AMS ads work. So it's a nut to crack. I'm always trying to get a book bub. I think a really good strategy that has always worked for me is getting a book bub right around release time of a new book. And I'm probably not the only one that's told you that, but it's really good to sort of like set a book or earlier book in the series free or to 99 cents and then just pimp the heck out of it because it gets people invested in the series. I think it's really important to make people feel like they're inside the book a little bit, or like when I have a book coming out, give people like a peek. I'm trying to think how to say this, like get them a little bit invested in the drama of it.
That makes sense.
Just creating the hype that it's coming and you really want it. And
exactly. Yeah. So I'm doing a lot of Facebook ads. Now I'm doing a lot of Facebook ads all the time. That's not something I wasn't doing, but I figured out that my best entry to the series is Wake Up Call Girl, even though it's number 2, but they're all standalone, so it doesn't matter.
See, no, that's the one I started with too. Isn't that interesting? Because, but that's the one that appealed to me the most, like for whatever reason. And the one I read last was actually book number 1. And I love book number 1. Like book number 1 is awesome. But there was just something about Wake Up Call Girl that appealed to me. Isn't that interesting?
I think that's just, and it's something that I didn't know about the series at first because I was trying to pimp number 1, but then I realized it's sort of a more complex hook. But Wake Up Call Girl, it's like, what is she calling about? What do they say? Is there like sexy talk? Yes. So it's just, so that's like and it's just like a fan favorite. So once you figure out the entry and the entry point, it's in a way it's always letting the readers lead me to it without, I think so much about marketing is, it's almost like being a sailor and going, where's the wind?
Yeah. It's so true. So so they're all standalone, all your books, Annika? Okay.
All this rom-coms, yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
They kind of all link in, like they have the same. They're often in the same building, and it's connected by the women rather than the men per se.
Yes. They all know each other. So like, I guess if you started with number 5, then you'll know that like this couple's together, that's from book number 1, but it's not that big of a spoiler.
No. There's no spoilers.
But you see, and like in book number 1, there's that dog, and I always make sure that the dog appears because I really like the little dog, and people like seeing the little dog. Like,
What is it about dogs? His name is Smuckers.
Muckers, yes.
And it's Vicky that does the jewelry, isn't it? So she's got this amazing
Yes.
jewelry line, and it's like a necklace that says "Smuck You."
Yes,
And
she
that-
has a little
and that it-
jewelry. Yeah.
Yeah, and it
Love
appears
it.
in later books, and so it's all very interlinked, which is great. I think as a reader, you're kind of looking for the little things. It's like, oh, look, it's Vicky's jewelry, and yeah.
So have you always been publishing wide?
Yes, I mean, I tried KU briefly with the bank robbers, like 3 years back, and I mean, I just put it in there, and I'm like, oh, this doesn't work, and I took it out again. I think like, but like my readers are wide, and so I'm just like sort of going with it, and I think if you're going to go into KU, you have to just go all in, or go if you're wide. I don't know. Are you guys wide?
No, have been, but
I agree.
not
I
now.
think either it's too hard to. It's two different approaches, and I think it's very hard to do both at the same time for authors.
Yes,
Time
absolutely,
is
and it's a different readership too. Even though sometimes I look, there's a lot of rom-coms in KU, so sometimes I'm like, wow, but whatever.
Yeah.
I'm wide now, so I'm staying there.
Yeah.
I mean,
know,
as readers, we can't get KU here in New Zealand, so we just, like I almost don't. As a reader, I'm just like, I just buy the books. Like it's not, it doesn't even occur to me. But yeah,
You can't get KU in New Zealand.
no.
Wow, I didn't know that.
No.
Yeah.
No. So it's not.
Interesting.
It's mostly pretty much America and UK specific.
I think they can get it in Australia now, like maybe, but it hasn't.
But from their store though, and it might not be quite.
Yeah. Anyway,
Interesting.
it's interesting, but anyway, so talking about the Kinky Bank Robbers series. So the other thing I wanted to just quickly talk about before we sign off here is I really think, and it's to do with your character chemistry between the two characters, but you write great sex scenes as well. So could you give, I don't know, a few quick tips about how to write? I feel like I'm kind of asking you the world's hardest question. Like, just quickly tell us everything there is about writing a sex scene and doing it well. Like, just quickly. No, kidding.
Well, let's see. Like, I think when I'm approaching a sex scene, I do think like in every book, I like to have one sex scene that's kind of transgressive and one sex scene that's kind of sweet. And by transgressive, I mean like it can be anything depending on the book. Like in a dark book, a sex scene is going to be very transgressive in it one way. But like with like a romantic comedy, maybe the transgressiveness can be like it's in like a weird place where they shouldn't be, or
who was it that they had sex at the top of a building that he was redoing? Who was that? I can't remember. That was Henry Locke, wasn't it?
Right. Yes. Yeah. That was the book number 1, right? Like they shouldn't be there. It's a little bit exposed, so there's like, I think it's just exciting to have something that's a little bit forbidden, or maybe it's something that's forbidden in terms of, the character isn't the type to ask for a specific thing and is very sort of vulnerable to do that or something like that. So transgression can, or like, or like Pretty Woman where they won't kiss on the lips or something like that. So there can be different, so then it would be very transgressive for that kiss to happen. So I like to, so as long as you kind of manage the reader to plant that it would be forbidden if it's something like the kiss thing, or if it's just like clearly forbidden, like, oh, look, everyone can see, like, we're in front of a plate glass window over all of Manhattan or whatever it is. I think it's exciting. Like, I think a boring sex scene is like, come on, let's go to the bedroom now. And have an expected thing, or if you skip stages, like whatever. So I always go for the transgressive sex scene, and then I'll go for the sweet but vulnerable one where there's something, it's like, it's not just how can I make it hot, but how do these two characters have sex? Like,
that's what you do really well.
Well, thank you. I'm trying to think of like what's on my mind when I'm trying to do that, but like I think like
Is it to do with their mottos? Like, so you think about, I'm not enough and I'm a bad guy. Could you be?
It can be a little bit. You could wind that. Yeah. I'm trying to think, like in Return Billionaire to Sender, in that one, she's like, she like makes these sort of sexy demands, that's really unlike her, and then she feels bad about it, and it leads to this whole thing about like, what can I ask for? Like, I'm not the kind of girl, I'm not enough, and I'm not the kind of girl who makes demands and asks for things. And so it was sexy that she did it. And so there needs to be something in their heart a little bit, that's coming out. Or like, Molly O'Keefe, M. O'Keefe does this really well, and we talk about this a lot, where they're like bringing vulnerability into it, and like one character, like having a mask fall off, or one character begging for a mask to fall off, or like a character going, stop making a joke, I want this to be serious, like asking or pleading for something that's real. So he's kind of trying to find some real bones in something, and not just like hot, though I like, you want it to be hot too. And I know that people talk about invoking all 5 senses, and I think it's really important to slow down and do that. Like, really think about every moment, short sentences in every moment, like, how like in a musical where they'll even like the mailman will have a song to sing, right? Like they'll stop and like something's happening. And so like, I think like in a sex scene, you kind of want what's happening with, there's so many ways to like look at senses, like just stop what you're doing, like stop the scene, stop going, like, and then he like unzips, her belt, but it's like, what does the ground feel like? Like, what does your skin feel like? What is the breath doing? What is like you can expand the smallest moment out. And that, I think, makes it hot, right?
Yeah.
I like that. That's a great tip.
Yeah.
Do you tend to write the sex scenes from the heroine point of view, since she's kind of the reader, if you like, or
Would be Jill, wouldn't it?
the other way?
It just depends on the scene. Like, I think it depends on who I want to keep cloaked in a way. So a lot of times it is good to go from the heroine point of view. I think that can be hot, because you're like, the man is mysterious, like, what's he going to do? But there are times where I'm like, it's better to go from the hero's point of view. Like, maybe, I think I'm not going to say, I've heard someone say one time, who has the most to lose? And I think that's a good tip.
Yeah.
But it's also like, who, I feel like I just kind of, I think about just which point of view it's going to be better in.
Which would be the stronger one, right? Like, which one would maybe have the most impact? Something like that.
Yeah, or most, maybe it's almost like who, I don't know. Now I'm just thinking out loud. I just kind of, I kind of just think about which way it would be more exciting for the reader, I guess, is what it boils down to.
Yeah. So much thinking goes into your writing. Like,
I know, right?
Start thinking a lot more about my writing is what I've gotten from you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah.
Oh my God! Like, I hope I haven't like done that thing where it's like the caterpillar.
It's like the artisan. Like, when it's like watching an artisan of anything working. Whether it's a baker, whether it's a woodworker. It's that kind of the crafting and the care and the thought, I think, is really really inspiring. So yeah.
Oh, I hope so. I hope this has been helpful. I mean, I love
great.
talking about it, and I love hearing other people's processes.
Yeah,
Look who's here.
Oh, it's the cat. I recognize the cat from Instagram.
Yeah.
Well, we're over an hour now, so I think it's time we...
oh my goodness.
Yeah. But it's been so fascinating chatting with you, Annika. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
This has been so fun. Your podcast rocks, and I'm like so happy to be on it.
Oh,
thank you so much.
We're happy to have you here.
Yeah, it's been awesome. So if someone wants to come and find you and see more of your books, where should they go?
Let's see. Well, there, just go, like, I could say Google Annika Martin. Oh, my website recently, like, all the images got imploded, but my website is mostly functional. It is at AnnikaMartinBooks.com. Like, I want to, and I like do it all myself. So I haven't been able to like get the images back on, but AnnikaMartinBooks.com does have links to all of my books, or else just like any vendor.
Cool.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you.
And where can we be found, Shah?
And we can be found at spygirlspodcast.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it. Sorry, I interrupted you.
We're all over the show.
Yes.
We're everywhere. Awesome. Well, thank you all for listening to another episode of the Spa Girls podcast. Thank you so much for coming and joining us, Annika. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was fun.
No worries at all. That's all for now. Farewell.
Keep well. Bye.
Bye.